You're listening to episode 139 of the D6 podcast.
I don't know anything more important in our society or in the kingdom of God than to help the church, help the family.
Discipleship is not an event, it's a way of life.
And one day it just hit me that discipleship at home was not about doing more. It was about inviting Christ into what we were already doing.
The goal of family ministry is not families sitting on the couch holding hands and singing Kumbaya. The ultimate goal is families that love God, love people, and make disciples of all peoples.
So that's why you're here. You're here to say 1 hour a week, as significant and as awesome as it is, we know that it's not enough and we want to be intentional with every hour.
You're listening to the D6 podcast. Here's your hosts, Ron Hunter and Jeremy Lee.
This is the family ministry podcast that helps you connect church and home, and it's Christmas! I mean, you may not be listening to this on Christmas Day, kind of hoping that you're not, actually. I hope you're with family, chilling and resting. But we went ahead and brought this out so that you can reconnect with it at a later date, or maybe you're avoiding your family meal for a little bit, and you need just a break to yourself, and you're hiding in a corner, and you're like, hey, I'll listen to the podcast. No matter what's going on, Merry Christmas, glad you're with us. And what are you doing?
Well, being it's Christmas Day, my wife and I always typically eat Chinese for lunch.
Wow.
So we are
recording. We're not in the studio on Christmas.
That's right.
We should probably tell people
We should. But that's what we would be doing on that day. And being people, a lot of people get this a day early because, we can't control Apple iTunes and when they release it. And,
Merry Christmas Eve!
That's right. Or Merry Christmas Eve. So anyway, whenever you're getting it, this is the week of Christmas.
Oh, great. And we are going to be talking holidays today with our friend Lydia Randall. She's going to be talking to us about connecting traditions and holidays to family discipleship. And then we also have Lissy Rienow, and you were sharing with me offline just a second ago about just how Lissy killed it at your Connect Tour.
Yeah, she did. We had 2 weeks of Connect Tour this past year, earlier this year, I guess it would be. And our speakers were Dr. Edward Moody, Amy Rienow, and myself. That was the original three. And then found out that Lissy was going to be traveling with her mom on this Connect Tour. So we're kind of like all packed in a big van, traveling together, 1,000 miles, 4 cities, that kind of thing. And so we all four spoke. And Lissy had the title of how is it like growing up in a pastor's home when they're teaching family ministry and you're getting the instruction? How does a teenager interpret all of that? How do they digest it, take it? And she really did an incredible job of, here's what my parents are saying, but here's how I interpreted it. And here's what I wanted to, see them understand about me when they were communicating this. And so she kind of is like a guide or an interpreter between the parents and the teenagers to help them understand the parents' intent versus where the kids are right now. And so the four of us would speak, and then we would have lunch, and then we have a panel discussion. Guess who got all the questions at the end? Lissy did.
That's great.
Everybody there wanted to hear more about this because it's such a great topic, and I think when our listeners hear her today, they'll understand why.
Oh, my goodness. Well, you set that up perfectly. So let's go ahead and jump in. We're going to start with Lydia Randall. We'll be with her after the break. She'll be talking about connecting traditions and holidays to family discipleship.
Since 2009, the D6 Conference has empowered thousands of church leaders to embrace family ministry and strengthen the connection between church and home. Reaching that many church leaders, think of how many homes and communities across the world have been impacted in the last 9 years. My family, like yours, is among them. As a team here at D6, we've had the privilege of being in Dallas, Louisville, and Greensboro, plus 5 other countries. So each year we prayerfully consider the best place to host this growing international gathering, and we have a big announcement to make. After thoughtful consideration and prayer, we are excited to announce the D6 Conference in 2019 will be hosted in beautiful Orlando, Florida. Did you hear me? Orlando, Florida. The entire team at D6 cannot imagine a more iconic city where you can see families of all ages come together. the very basis of generational discipleship. Imagine debriefing your discipleship strategy on Tom Sawyer Island in the heart of Magic Kingdom. Or take a day at Universal Studios to dream of what your church could do in family ministry. The conference will be hosted at the state-of-the-art Marriott World Center. You gotta check this place out. It's both beautiful and offers fun for your entire family ministry team. So come spend some time away from your daily routine in an affordable city and convention center designed for your family. The D6 conference is the conversation, Orlando is the venue, but your team brings the chemistry. The D6 conference always provides world-class learning, networking, and access to family ministry resources. And now we get to do that with you in a brand new way. We can't think of a better place to host the D6 conference. So lock the dates in your calendar, and we'll see you and your team here in Orlando in 2019.
Hey, we have our D6 friend with us, Lydia Randall. Thanks for being with us.
Absolutely. Great to be here.
Actually, this year, this is now my third time because we did some panels a while back, didn't we?
Yes.
And I'm going to tell you what, that was fun too. And Lydia has been with D6. We were just laughing. I'm going to ask her during this interview about a talk she did in 2013. So that just kind of gives you an idea. She's been around for a while with D6. And attending the conferences, serving on the speaking team. Thank you so much for all you've done.
Absolutely.
Lydia's a wife and mother who has been serving parents and children for almost 2 decades, and she's serving as the director of Home Point at Lake Point Church. Lydia is the author of My Faith Box, a resource for parents to be intentional with their children through their spiritual journey while creating a beautiful keepsake. She's also the creator of Faith Path, a strategy for birthday-driven kits from the church to help parents intentionally pass faith one step at a time. Great resources. Okay. I hope you guys will check those out. Now, one of the things that Lydia does well is she helps us connect traditions and holidays to family discipleship. So that's our theme for today. We actually did last year an interview in a similar way that I enjoyed the format where I kind of gave you holidays and you gave me ways that we can kind of infuse faith into those holidays inside of our families. So I brought it back. This is the sequel, okay? So I'm going to give you some more holidays if that's okay with you.
Super. Let's do it.
All right. So how can we connect 4th of July to family discipleship? See, I'm trying to make it hard on you.
This is good. Good stuff. And, I think there's so much with holidays and traditions and really rituals that we can incorporate our faith into them. We can do lots of fun things that are great traditions, but when you incorporate faith and you use those times and those opportunities, that really takes deep roots, and those are great opportunities to take. So 4th of July, there's actually some fun things to do there. One of the ideas that we really encourage is to look at just the history of our nation. It is just so grounded on God and on our faith, and that's really just a great opportunity to look back at that. And so one of the things we suggest is looking at the Declaration of Independence, pulling that up. There's 4 references to God in the Declaration of Independence. And so looking and talking about how our nation was founded on that, just firm foundation of faith, making a flag, using white for purity, blue for perseverance, and red for bravery. And then talking about, okay, how as a family can we persevere? Can we be brave? And can we ask God to help us be pure? Looking at verses together like Ephesians 3:12. In Him, through Him, and through faith in Him, we may approach God with freedom and confidence. And so simple things, having fun. You can make a flag, but actually incorporating something into it that really allows our kids to see how our nation was founded on a firm foundation of faith.
I was trying to stump you. And you're attaching meaning to colors on the flag, and my goodness. Okay, well, take this. How about Valentine's Day?
Valentine's Day, okay. I think sometimes we just talk about love and relationships, but really kind of going back to the greatest love that we've seen and the greatest example of that in Christ, that he laid his life down for us. And so I think a great thing to do for Valentine's Day is doing a service project together with your family to really demonstrate and say, you know, we're going to model Christ and the love that he's shown for us. And so we're going to go wash some other people's feet, and we're going to bless them, finding some service opportunities to do together as a family. For spouses to do, we do a love journal. And so it's a great gift to give for Valentine's, but we have just a very cheap, I think it was $4.99 at TJ Maxx, and we just lay it on each other's nightstands, and it just goes back and forth. And I think a lot of times we think those things about each other, but we really take the opportunity to say them and to write them down. And sometimes you need to have that written down to go back and look at and go, there's a reason I love this person, and I choose to love this person. And so, you know, just a quick note of, I admire this about you, or I really appreciate you pitching in and helping during the season. I see just the wonderful ways that you teach and love our children, and I just appreciate you. So just kind of going back and forth and putting that on each other's nightstands or pillows, just a fun thing to do for each other.
I'm going to take that idea.
You got
Thank you very, very much. Now, I'm failing miserably at stumping you. I'm going to try one more time. New Year's.
New Year's. I love New Year's. New Year's is so fun.
Oh, man.
Okay, so a couple things that we love to do for New Year's. I love to take all of our Christmas cards that we get and put them on a ring, and then we start New Year's starting to pray for those families when we have mealtime. And so if you want to be prayed for, you throw us a card. But just kind of that we take those relationships, and instead of just taking those and throwing them in the trash, we take them and we pray over those families for the whole year, and really just lift them up. But my favorite thing that we do is our memory box. And I think a lot of times we go do fun things and we want to throw all the stuff away, but we have this like love-hate relationship with, I should keep this, but I should throw it away. So we have a box and we throw it in. And on New Year's Eve, we decide on a word for the year or a verse for the year. This year, my 8-year-old son said, I know what our word's going to be. And we were like, okay, well, this could be interesting. You never know what's going to come out of an 8-year-old. And he said, well, actually, can it be 2 words? I said, sure, maybe, we'll see. And he said, I think it should be stand out. And he said, I think we should stand out for something different, that people would see Jesus in us and we'd stand out for that. And we were like, we were thinking like, yes, that is a good one, because ours were not near that great.
Way to go.
And so we have T-shirts. We went all out. And so we put that on our box. And when we do fun things, we throw it in the box. When we see God do great things, we put a hospital bracelet in there. We see God provide. We put things in there. And then New Year's Eve the next year, we open up the box and we go back through those things and we talk about God's faithfulness and the fun memories that we've had, and then we can throw it away. So
That's
stuff.
Great. Okay, so Father's Day and Mother's Day. Let's just put both of them together.
Okay, so one of the things that I would say for both of those, and we have fun ideas that we really encourage our families to do, to really celebrate and honor, to encourage and affirm those mothers and fathers in our lives. But I think I also just want to say one of the things we really encourage our people to do is to bless those that Mother's Day and Father's Day is a hard season for. And I think we often forget that those that have lost parents or have lost children, that those are really hard days for those families and those individuals. And so we really give them just some ideas of how to be a blessing to those people, and just acknowledging, that may be a hard time, is really just the body of Christ loving on them during those seasons. And so we just encourage, write a note, send them flowers, plant a flower or a tree in honor of those that they've lost or are struggling with. And so fun ways that we celebrate. Something we did this last year for my husband is we just did an acrostic of his name, and his name is Mason. So don't use these words because it will not make sense. But we said M, he's a model. He's marvelous, manly, masculine. He's a mentor. A, he's adventurous, amazing, admirable. S, he's silly, supportive, spectacular. He's a servant. O, he's optimistic and outgoing. N, he's noble, noteworthy, and really nice.
Nice.
So just something fun. I think if we take those opportunities to really honor the mothers and fathers, and I think a lot of times we think those things, but we don't really say them. to one another out loud and really affirm them. And so creating a culture where our kids hear us honor one another and honor our husband or honor our wife, to say we value you and we see the things that you're doing and they mean a lot to us.
Yeah, people are going to love. I hope they love hearing all these ideas. And what I'm hoping you're doing, if you're listening to this or watching this, I hope it's sparking a ton of creativity inside of you. Because obviously, Lydia, God's gifted you with a creative bent towards being able to see these things. But not everybody sees it this way. So let's talk to the person who's listening to you going, oh, girl, I got no way am I going to be able to pull all that off. How about let's give them a little something's better than nothing talk, right?
And, I think that's so huge because I think sometimes we get so overwhelmed and we think, okay, I've got to do all this stuff. And so then you just don't do anything because it's just overwhelming and we're busy and we just can't make it happen. I think just choose one thing that you're going to do. And I would say it may already be something that you're doing, but you maybe just take it a step further and you go, okay, how can we take what we're already doing and give those deep roots? How can we connect our faith or do something? And so sometimes it's stuff you're already doing, you just are more intentional about what you're already doing. And so sometimes it doesn't need to be some big, huge, creative thing. It just needs to be being intentional about what you're already doing.
I love it. That's very encouraging. Now, speaking of busyness, I was looking at a talk from 2013. See, I haven't stumped you yet. I'm trying to take you back 5 years ago. But anyway, you were talking about busyness and families. I don't think much has changed, though, in those 5 years. We're still busy. And I think it would be a really cool way to kind of mix into this. What is some encouragement that you have for busy families?
I think busyness, I remember growing up, my dad would say, if Satan can't make you bad, he'll make you busy. And that just so stuck with me because I'm a rule follower. And so I wasn't going to go that way. But, I think it's one of the things that I talked about is it's kind of become our new fine. How are you doing? We don't say fine anymore. We say, oh my goodness, we're so busy. We're so overwhelmed. Gosh, we've got this going on and this going on. But I think the problem is that we almost wear it like a badge of honor. There's something that affirms us that, gosh, we've got a lot going on. We're doing well. And I think in ministry, we dress this up really well because we can say, well, this is for the cause of the kingdom. And I think we have to be really careful. And I'll get on a soapbox here, but I've had ministry leaders tell me, well, I feel like God has called me to sacrifice my marriage and sacrifice my family for the sake of the kingdom, and I feel like God's going to take care of my marriage and my family. And that's just wrong, and it's just not biblical. And God is never going to call us to sacrifice something that goes against His truth and His what He has set in His design. And so I think we have to rest. We have to step back and we have to take those seasons where we allow the Lord to replenish us. I think for ministry leaders, it's very hard to find those Sabbath times because we're serving, and those are times where traditionally we're at the church and we are doing work. And so if you don't know when your Sabbath is, you're probably not doing your Sabbath. And so looking at maybe that's a half a day on Friday and maybe a half a day on another day that you're splitting those up, but you're having time to replenish your soul so that you're not so busy doing the work of God that you are not connecting with God and walking with Him.
Okay, so there is a ton of cool stuff that you guys are doing, and I want to just make sure we highlight a few of them. Tell us about My Faith Box.
So My Faith Box, I actually created the first year of my son's life. And as all these families were doing scrapbooks and doing all these things for their kids, I really felt just like I wanted to help kind of get from, okay, my child is born, I want to be intentional, to how do I get him to accepting Christ and then launching him as a fully developing follower of Christ. And I wanted to have a plan for that. And so I wanted to be intentional. And so I created My Faith Box, which is almost like a spiritual scrapbook and just a easy terms of it, but every year on your child's birthday, you have some pages to fill out. It's not overwhelming, but then you create an annual parent plan, and we give just one simple thing, either a spiritual discipline or preparing for a certain milestone that's coming up in your child's life, to just be intentional about that 1 year. I do think, so many families are just so overwhelmed and feel so ill-equipped that they just need one thing. If I can just have one thing to focus on for this child for this year. And then we give just ideas of how to start doing that with that child for that year. So there's places to put when your child accepts Christ, when they're baptized, those significant milestones in your child's faith journey, so that they can look back over that and they can see that, and then it becomes a gift that you give to your child when they go off to college.
Wow. I bet that's incredible.
It's fun.
All right, so you're teaching a seminar this year called Thriving in Ministry and at Home, and I bet there's some ministers who would love to know what you're sharing with that.
So I have the unique story of, first of all, I am a PK. I am a pastor's kid. I am a pastor's wife. My husband is in full-time ministry. Okay. And then I am in fulltime ministry. So there is all kinds of crazy town going on. If I'm not in therapy, no, it's such a huge blessing. But the different dynamics of growing up in a ministry home, and now having a spouse that's in ministry, and also being in ministry as a mom and a wife, I think God's given me some unique perspectives there. And so I'm talking about each one of those areas in that talk. But I'll say a couple of things that I think are really huge that my parents did with our family, and some things that we do with our kids. One very simple thing that my mom did is, and my dad, is that they talked about my dad going to work. It wasn't every time that my dad was at church that it was, your dad's at church, your dad's at church, your dad's at church. It was, your dad's at work. And I knew every other dad was at work. And so I think growing up, I've heard a lot of PKs who end up having a bitterness and struggle with how much their dad was serving and how much their dad was at the church. And for me, I think that was just something very simple, that just the wording of that gave me a perspective of, there's not a bitterness towards the church at all. There's a love there, but he was at work, just like every other dad was at work. And that was something very simple, but I think that just gave me a different bend there. Another thing I would say, for your spouse, but also for your kids, invite them in and let them know how they are a part of ministry. I remember growing up, there was an event that was very special to me that my dad was not able to come to. And I was having my selfish little pity party as to, everybody else has somebody else they can call. This is my dad. I want him to show up for this thing. And I remember that night sitting on the steps with him, and he was telling me how grateful he was that I allowed him to go and minister to this family that had just lost their baby that night. And all of a sudden, my selfishness and the things that I thought were so significant and important seemed so dumb and so silly. But if he had not shared that with me, I wouldn't have gotten a glimpse. And he sat there and he thanked me for allowing him to go minister to that family, and that because I allowed him to, I was a part of the ministry team. And I think there's times that we want to shield our family from those kind of things, but I think there's times where it's such a sweet moment to say, you are ministering. You ministered to this family because you allowed. And there's seasons that we have to do that, and that's okay. But inviting them into the ministry and letting them know how they're a part of it is just a huge win, I think.
Incredible. Thank you very much. Hey, drivefaithhome.com is your site. That's where they can find all your resources, correct?
Absolutely.
It means so much that you took some time to be with us today. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Scripture and modern-day research attests to this truth. When one generation commits to and engages in the discipleship of another generation, people of all ages know Jesus and become more like him. This commitment requires us to say goodbye to the myopic focus on the next generation and instead broaden our view to every generation. Every generation. Moms, dads, grandmas and grandpas, aunts and uncles, kindergartners and middle school students, college freshmen and newlyweds, each one awakened to Jesus Christ and living out a vibrant faith with one another. We invite you to adopt this focus at the D6 Conference, a family ministry event built on the Deuteronomy 6 philosophy of generational discipleship. You will experience 3 days of strategy, resources, and action steps to help move your church forward together. Discover what's in store at d6conference.com.
Our thanks go to our friend Lydia Randall. She does such a good job of just helping us think through how to connect holidays and faith. And those are some holidays I just didn't even consider thinking through in that direction. And I appreciate her thought on that.
You know, as parents, do you create a hierarchy of your favorite holidays and how much you spend energy and time on which ones?
For sure.
Which one's your top three? I know I can guess your top two, but give us your top three.
Thanksgiving is my favorite.
Absolute. Okay.
And then Christmas.
And Christmas, okay.
And then New Year's.
New Year. Really? Why New Year's?
I'm a big goal-oriented guy. I love the fresh start of New Year's.
Mm-hmm.
I love football. And if you notice, football and food is the theme of my three favorite holidays.
I love it.
What about you? What are your three favorites?
It's hard for me to rank. I love Christmas, without a doubt. It's a chance for families to be together. You know, there's more families sitting around the tables or in the living rooms together, and I love that. And usually it causes a break from the routine of work. And the goal would be that we kind of unplug from electronics, unplug from all the distractions, and plug into family the way we should more often throughout the year. Mm-hmm. Thanksgiving has historically been a favorite of ours because we get away, our family, and just to kind of selfishly take that holiday. But now our kids are grown, and my wife and I are in a new season trying to discover what we're going to do with this holiday that we've had very specific areas because our kids are married and they have other families that we're sharing with, and we don't like sharing at this point. So
hey, you get away with your family, and I think we should make sure, because there's one last chance to talk about another getaway that we kind of care about on this podcast, the
What's
D6
that?
Conference.
That is a getaway. Not only if it were just a conference, but the location this year, Jeremy.
Orlando. Disney. D6.
That's right. So many things that you could take your family down to. This would be a great time for the church to take their team and their spouses.
I'm thinking the best kind of Christmas presents would be to jump in and grab a price break. Now, look, we know that not everybody's going to be listening to this on the week of Christmas, but if you are listening at the week of Christmas, December 31st is the end of the price break.
And that's our first best price break that we have of our normal registration period.
Yeah, so basically it's a last chance to grab a great discount and make a plan for you and your team to come to D6 Conference. So we want to make sure everybody knew about that.
And many of our churches, just to remind you, they're reserving 10, 12, 15 spots. We had one church last year reserve 38 spots, and they filled in the names later. So people are bringing their entire teams, not just paid staff, but their key volunteers throughout their whole church.
Book as many spots as you possibly can afford. Fill in the names later.
That's right.
I like it. Hey, Lissy Rienow, you did a great job setting this up. So let's
no introduction needed. I think you'll be wowed by her.
All right, let's listen to Lissy.
I want to welcome a new guest that our audience has never heard from before. However, they have heard from her parents. And I got a chance to travel with this young lady who was a keynote speaker at our D6 Connect Tour Week 1. And I was blown away by not only what she talked about from the main stage, but by how she conducted her life while we spent many miles in the vans and sitting at meals as a group of people. This young lady is far more mature than her chronological age, which, by the way, is 18. And she's the second of 7 kids in the Rienow family. This is Lissy Rienow, daughter of Rob and Amy Rienow. Welcome to the D6 podcast, Amy.
Thank you so much. Thanks for having me.
I really wanted to make this about you and not your parents, but everybody knows your parents. And so, we just have to make that introduction. And
Absolutely.
I have like 20 questions I want to ask you about all the dirty laundry on your dad and mom, but I'm not going to ask that, okay?
All right.
Your parents are incredible.
Yes.
And as incredible as they are, and they've written numerous books, and you've written one as a devotional to teenagers as well. We're not talking about that topic today, but we'll let you talk about that at the end of this, if you don't mind, so that they can be aware of that and find that on your website. Here's my question, though. Even in the most intentional homes, and again, your parents are stellar at family ministry. Even in the most intentional homes, things don't always go perfectly. What parents are intending to teach or coach, the kids are looking and kind of hearing a different message. And it doesn't always go as smoothly as everybody plans. And I don't want people to think it's perfect. Can you kind of pull back the curtain and talk about how your parents were doing things that were right, but you're a teenager. You had some pushback. Give us some insight on that. What does that look like?
Yeah, absolutely. I think a lot of times with parents and families that are trying to practice this model of family discipleship, a lot of times a message can be communicated to the parents, but it's often lost in translation when it comes to impressing that same desire and passion with their children and teenagers as well. And I can speak from experience that even in a home with two very intentional Christian parents, the spiritual attack on our relationship was really difficult at times, and especially in the middle school, high school years. We had a lot of relational struggles. And praise God, we were aware of this spiritual attack. But building those healthy discipleship parent-child relationships is a two-way street. It wasn't enough that my parents had turned their hearts towards me and were trying to help me grow in my faith. I had to make an intentional effort during the middle school, high school years, especially to turn my hearts to them.
Did you always want to turn your heart towards them, or were there?
No, not always. And I think the main thing we had to have was just really open conversations about it, because in our culture, we have this myth of adolescence that really from like 12 to 25, kids are going to be these idiots and not want to be around their families and kind of distance themselves from their parents. And that is all normal and natural. But the spiritual attack in that is on both sides for the parents and the teens. The attack on the teens is to pull away from the parents. And then the attack on the parents is to stop putting in the effort with their children. And so for me personally, even in the midst of a lot of really hard times and balancing school and friends and church and all of those external pressures, we had to keep working on our personal relationship during those years.
Okay, so now you just took me back to some memories from when my kids were teenagers, and I would be talking to them about something hard, and whether it was my son or my daughter, I knew both of their personalities well enough to know when they had checked out of the conversation.
Mm-hmm.
What is a teenager thinking of when you check out? And what second part of that is, what should a parent do when they realize the teen is checking out? Because most time we just amp up our anger and get frustrated and things escalate.
Absolutely.
Help us navigate that from a teenager's perspective, please.
I think that sometimes, at least for my parents, they did a really good job at disciplining us when we were kids, like those quick consequences when we did something wrong. But then as we sort of got older, I think it's easy for parents to transition into just lecturing without any immediate consequences. And we hit a phase in my relationship with my parents. And really, all the lecturing did was make me want to pull my heart away from them more. Because it was constant, like, you're doing this wrong, you're doing this wrong, you're doing this wrong. But there wasn't any consequences to go along with it, which wasn't helping my behavior, and it was hurting our relationship.
So what do you mean by consequences?
So for me, like throughout high school, if I had done something, if I was disrespectful to my parents or rude to my siblings, my parents would give me an immediate consequence. So it would be taking away my phone for a couple days. Maybe it was grounding me for the weekend. But it was done in love instead of a long, angry lecture of what I was doing. And don't get me wrong, there is power in a good lecture from time to time. But there has to be consequences that come along with it. And then conversations that follow the consequences that are really digging down into, okay, what is the heart issue behind this? What is the behavior behind this? Like, why are you doing these things? My parents would often ask me, they're like, is there anything that we are doing that's hurting you? Or is there anything that you are feeling like needs to change? Or are you angry at us?
Okay. We got to stop and unpack two things you've said in here, and I'm going to say them out loud so I don't forget them both. Number one, our audience is gasping, and you lost them when you said teenagers want consequences. The second part of that is, how do you reconnect back to the heart issue? So number one, give an appropriate possibility of consequences that parents should consider, because sometimes you just don't know what to do. What's an appropriate consequence for a 14 to 18-year-old boy or girl? Give us 2 or 3 or 4 that would get your attention, that would be attention getting, but not like permanently harsh.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think it's different for each kid. Like, what's going to be effective for me might not be effective for my other siblings. And consequences are always changing as you get older. So for me personally, I'm a very social person. I love hanging out with people. And so a consequence that actually hurt and that actually affected me was if my parents said I was grounded for the weekend or took my phone away for the weekend. Now, there's boundaries within that, because obviously if I was going somewhere and needed my phone, they weren't going to be like, no, you can't have your phone, you're grounded from your phone. But I would say it's different for each kid, and what certain consequences that weren't actually consequences didn't have the same effect. And I think parents know their kids the best out of anyone. So really figuring out what is actually going to take something away in that situation and actually teach to modify the behavior.
Now, how do you connect with their heart in doing so, rather than just kind of going, there's your punishment? I mean, what's the connect to the heart?
Speaking from my own experience with this, I mean, consequences are hard. No one likes getting a consequence. There can be a lot of anger and bitterness that I experienced after receiving one of these. But I think the key was that there wasn't these angry interactions between me and my parents. It wasn't this like hour long where they are angry and lecturing and I'm responding in defiance. It was a quick consequence with some time in between to kind of cool off, to accept that consequence. But then we always had to have a follow-up conversation. That my parents did a really good job of being very gentle and loving in these conversations, which helped me in giving my heart back to them and being honest with them about what I was going through. And it wasn't always easy. These situations are never easy. But I think the main thing is that those periods of angry back and forth banter between parent and child, all that's doing is breaking the relationship down even more.
Okay, here's our last question. We're just about out of time. For parents who have not been as intentional as your parents are, but they're listening to you going, man, I wished I could do this the way your parents have. From the perspective of a teenager, how do they get started with intentional, heartfelt conversations?
I think that for my parents, it has to start in a relationship first of affection and fun. And so if parents don't have those kinds of relationships first with their children, it's not necessarily an immediate jump to those spiritual conversations. And so my mom did a really good job with me throughout high school, where she would pick me up from school maybe once every 2 weeks, and she would say, okay, Lissy, we're going to go to Starbucks and get a coffee, because she knows that that's what I love to do with her. Or maybe it's going out shopping for the afternoon and having fun experiences together that are building that relationship. And it made me, at least, I wanted to be with my parents. I wanted to spend time with my parents. And it was through those just fun activities that we had together. And then as a result of that, we were able to have more heartfelt conversations. Another thing really quick that my dad did that was awesome for me is that in a family of so many kids, it can be hard to have those one-on-one intentional conversations, especially if the kid has to be the one to initiate it all the time, or if they have something on their mind. And so my dad would come to me probably once a month, and we would go out for breakfast as intentional, set aside time that I could talk to him about whatever I was struggling with. Maybe it was drama at school, problems with a sibling, just intentional set aside time for that heart connection and to build that relationship.
That's wonderful, Lissy. I wished everybody could really continue to interpret their relationships through their teenagers, not just through their own desires. I enjoyed hearing you speak at length on the Connect Tour, and I trust our audiences enjoyed you kind of speaking from that perspective today. Tell them where they can find your book and more resources by your parents. Share the website for your parents.
So we are with Visionary Family Ministries, and our website is visionaryfam.com. We have tons of resources on parenting and marriage and family discipleship. I recently came out with a devotional for teenagers called Living for Christ at Home that really focuses on what does it mean to be a Christian at home? What does it mean to honor your parents and love your siblings and be a servant leader? And so it's a free download on our website, and I would really encourage you all to check it out.
So if you're a student pastor, you need to go download those and pass it out to every single student in your ministry, because the parents can't handle them. Go, hey, you need to be a student who loves Christ. It really needs to come from you as student leaders. So I challenge you to do that. I can vouch for every resource that's on their website. Amy and Rob Rienow are both authors of Randall House and D6. They've both spoken for us. Lissy, you now have your part of the family, and I so appreciate your commitment to the pursuit of Christ's righteousness. You are going to do some exceptional things in your life. We look forward to seeing what they are.
Thank you very much.
Hey, Lissy, great job. The build-up was worth it, and now I understand why Ron is such a fan of your presentation, and now that's going to be coming out in the form of a book, correct?
That's our intent. Now, obviously we're committing before it's written.
Uh-oh.
So let's just put a little pressure on Lissy, because she's listening right now, I'm sure, to her own podcast going, be looking, and maybe you can call and pre-order right now and say, hey, when she writes it, I want that book, but she's in the beginning stages of it.
Lissy, the public is demanding it.
That's right.
Open up your laptop, girl, and put it on paper.
Forget all the classes and exams you got. We want a book.
That's right.
That's right. Rob and Amy just started to shoot me a nasty email, I'm sure.
Merry Christmas to Lydia. Merry Christmas to Lissy. Ron, Merry Christmas to you. And to all of our listeners, hope you have a great Christmas. Thank you guys for listening. It's been a great year. When we come back on our next episode, we will have Robbie and Candy Gallaty.
That will be an exciting interview.
What a cool couple.
Yeah,
and we know Robbie. Robbie's been with us, and he's just a fun guy, bundle of energy. But look, I cannot tell a lie, my friend. His wife, Candy, brings it on this interview.
Yes, she does.
And so she is an equal voice in that scenario for sure. She has got a strong, she's just got strong content.
She'll challenge you to think
enjoy
differently, yes.
We're going to be talking about helping families to bear fruit. And then Candy's going to also speak to her ministry to women and how to do that. It's got a lot of cool opportunities for us to learn and grow as ministers and as families. Like I said, Merry Christmas to everyone.
Merry Christmas, everyone.
Hope you have a great week of ministry.
You've been listening to the D6 Podcast. You can learn more about D6 at d6family.com.